Hello, welcome back to the Coaching Closet. I'm Rochelle Kramer, certified life coach and narcissistic abuse expert. I'm here today. I am finally going to start talking in my videos a lot about narcissism and putting out more videos. I started this channel a couple of years ago and things in my life got really busy. So I'm just going to put it out there. I'm putting out more videos. So it's one of my intentions for the coming year in 2024. We are at the end of 2023. Super exciting time for me. I just started in August my master's program, my graduate school journey, and enjoying marriage and family therapy program at Abilene Christian University. It's an online program and a lifelong dream of mine to become a licensed clinical therapist. I'm doing an emphasis in trauma. So how did I become an expert in narcissism? Well, 10 years ago when I first really started diving into what is narcissistic personality disorder, because it came into my life in a personal way, I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to see how I could help myself learn about it. The person that I cared about at the time that really wanted to see if I could help them. And so I started studying. I'm the kind of person that immerses myself when someone in my life has a problem. I really want to help them. So I started studying it and diving into it. So a decade later, I have read dozens of books about the topic, watched thousands and countless hours on YouTube from other experts, whether it's coaches, there's a lot of coaches out there, therapists, psychologists on the subject. It's interesting because when I got my bachelor's in psychology back in 1997, I do not recall talking about narcissistic personality disorder. It may have been something that we learned in class. It may have been something I studied in a book briefly, but it was more of a new topic back then in the 90s. It was not something that was really talked about like it is today. So, it's just been quite the journey for me to learn about it. So today I'm going to go over the criteria that's in the DSM, which is the official, one of the official books, but the main one that's used in by clinicians and people that diagnose mental disorders, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And I have a brand new copy for school. I had another copy, but this is like the updated, the DSM-5 TR. So this is it. It's super thick. It's detailed. I love this version of it. And I can just read this for fun, but I'm reading it for school. So I'm actually going to go through what the criteria for NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is. If you've never heard this is fresh information for you. You may be intrigued. You may be surprised. If you've heard it, but you've only watched videos on how it shows up in real life, you may be interested to find out what the actual criteria is. And I'm going to expound a little bit, but then my plan is to do videos on how it actually does show up in relationships. So NPD is part of the cluster B personality disorders, which is just, it's put into a certain category. So one short little explanation of it is that narcissistic personality disorder is a pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. So when you're talking about disorders, it is always a pattern. It's usually described as a pervasive pattern. So, the word narcissism and they're narcissistic, it's thrown around a lot. So much so that people on social media and other places are really constantly complaining. Like, I am so tired of hearing this term. I'm sick of it. Everyone's calling everyone else narcissistic. And I can completely understand that because, when someone learns a new term, or even it could be considered a new put down, right? Like, oh, I'm going to call them this. I'm going to say they're narcissistic or that they're a narcissist, because they've learned something new. They've learned a new way to describe a person. Well, when someone describes someone as a narcissist or narcissistic, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person fits the criteria, which I'm about to go into, to be diagnosed as having narcissistic personality disorder. In fact, there is a scale of narcissism. And so, everyone does have narcissistic traits. So if you go through the different traits of, narcissism, and you say that, oh, I've never had any of those traits, then you're probably lying to yourself, because each and every person has at one time or another, displayed traits like these, like you just have. And so that can be true of any of us at any given time. Like, we've all been selfish, we've all been grandiose, we've all, lacked empathy, which is the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes or not care about their feelings. Like, we've all done that. In fact, as children, we're pretty narcissistic, and especially as teenagers. So, we all have experienced these, but as a pattern, in a pervasive pattern, long-standing pattern in your life, that is completely different. So these are just things that do not change. And after being a teenager, young adult, they continue to, be a part of your personality, and they do affect your relationships, and they do affect, especially the ones that are close to you, and they can become a big problem for you in your life. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the diagnostic criteria. So in order to be diagnosed with this disorder by a professional, mental health care professional, has to be someone who is a licensed clinician or doctor. Then you have to have 5 out of these 9 traits. So it is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following. First one has a grandiose sense of self-importance. For example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. The second one is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. The third believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. The fourth one requires excessive admiration. The fifth has a sense of entitlement. Example, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. 6 is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. 7, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. 8, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. 9, shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Okay, so if 5 of 9 of those criterion are present in this person's personality, then they can be diagnosed with this disorder. So you might be thinking to yourself, like, well, I know people like that. And what's the difference between someone who has this personality disorder or just an absolute jerk? Well, a lot of times there's not. Like, you might know someone who's just, you think they're just a jerk, but they're actually a narcissist. They have a personality disorder. So usually if you can see these traits outwardly in someone in public, in someone that you don't know that well, that you're not really that familiar with, and you can see these things, like they insist on, they might treat people badly that are serving them. They might insist on cutting lines or parking in spots that aren't meant for them, or, very demanding and, loud. They may be actually kind of fun sometimes, but they're very grandiose. They need admiration. So they come across very charismatic, but they come in a room and they're just out there. That is a grandiose narcissist. There are some different types, and I'll be discussing those in my future videos. But those types, that's the type that you can kind of notice these things. And so that's not like a one-time thing. That's somebody that's like that all the time. But there are people that exhibit these traits behind closed doors, and then they act differently out in public. They act differently around people at their work, people that they want to fool. But then with their family and close relationships, they are very entitled and insistent and require admiration from the people closest to them, and require that those people always agree with them and do what they say, and, march to the beat of their drum. And those are more covert narcissists. Another word for those are vulnerable narcissists. So their self-importance is mainly that they are up here, and both of the types are like that, but everyone else is down below them. Like, they want people to agree with them. They think that their ideas and their opinions are not just their ideas and their opinions, that they're actually facts. And if people don't agree with them, that they're wrong. They don't empathize with the fact that other people can have a different viewpoint from them and still be right. They cannot fathom that. So there are people, these kind of people that have the disorder, they just look at people as they're beneath them, and they're very haughty in their attitudes. And they do think they're special, and they do have unreasonable expectations. And so the ones that are like this behind closed doors have very unreasonable expectations of their family members, and they put a lot of pressure on their family members to be a certain way for them. And it might show up in many different ways, but it might show up in them having their home a certain way, having a certain schedule for their family that they must adhere to, or they're going to hear about it. They're going to have love withdrawn. They're going to be punished in some way. They may rage. They may yell. They may withdraw and not talk to them for a period of time. They want automatic compliance. It's their way or the highway. And it's like that all the time. There's no diplomacy in any way, and it's kind of like they run like a military type situation in their homes, usually. Not always. There's no 100% with these people, but it's just kind of like the attitude of it's my way. And of course my way is right, and so they're not willing to sit down and listen to other people's feelings very often. They're just not, they don't have the capacity to understand or even want to understand someone else's point of view. They might pretend to get to the end of what they want, which is, getting out of this, fight or whatever you might be in, but not over time. You can recognize that they don't have that capacity. And then they're envious of others, and they'll usually, if there's someone that they're envious of, they'll put them down. If they see someone that's threatening to them in some way, if someone is maybe like doing something similar to them, like in business, if someone is similar to them in the amount of money they make, or it's similar to them in the way they look, if they're good looking, or if that's kind of their thing, if they're competitive with them, they will put them down, or they won't be able to. They're more competitive. They're not collaborative. So they will be, competitive with those people because they're envious with them. Or they'll think everyone's envious of them, and they'll be like, well, they don't like me and I'm not going to associate with them because, you know, they're out to get me, kind of thing. So they're just very arrogant and haughty in their attitudes, and they'll put other people down. They'll make fun of them because of their envy. And so it's really, really interesting how this can show up. It can show up in different ways. And I'll go into in future videos the different types of narcissists that can come out. But at least 5 out of those 9 criteria need to be present for the diagnosis. But, you know, as it's a sliding scale, as it gets more towards one end, it can still affect relationships and be detrimental to relationships. So their self-esteem is very fragile. What they do is they really have trouble accepting themselves. They operate under a lot of shame. And so they create a false persona, and they create kind of a mask of who they would like to be. And they present as very confident, but it's a false confidence. So it's arrogance. So, you know, if you're in tune with this kind of thing, you can start to identify if this is arrogance or true confidence, because truly confident people do not put other people down. Truly confident people do not gossip and talk about other people and try to put other people down so that they can lift themselves up. So it's a arrogant confidence, a false confidence, and they put a mask on. And so they're struggling with severe internal self-doubt, self-criticism, and emptiness, that it results in their need to actively seek others' admiration and approval. And so it's just, it's a constant, think of a constant sucking sound. They need that. And so if you've watched any other videos about narcissism, you know that they are emotional vampires. They need the source, they need supply, and they will suck the emotional blood out of you. They will drain you, deplete you, and they're a bottomless pit for, you cannot give them enough. So a lot of people, my clients in particular, my specialty is helping women and supporting them in getting clarity around their relationships. And one of my specialties is helping women who are in toxic or abusive relationships. And so many women think, as I once did, that if I love this person enough, if I just help them see that they're lovable and they're enough, then they won't need to do this anymore. They won't need to be this way. They'll know that they're enough, and they'll be confident, right? That's logical, but this is not logical. So there's not any amount of love that you can give these people that are suffering with this that will make them satiated. They're not, ever. And so the really sad part about this disorder that is very different than any other mental illness is that there is currently no cure for it. The main reason for that is they lack the ability to be self-reflective. Most people that end up being diagnosed with it, they're only diagnosed because family members come forward most of the time. Family members come forward and tell the therapist, tell the psychologist, tell the psychiatrist about what's going on in their home. Usually the narcissistic person does not tell the truth about what's going on. They're too ashamed. So their family members come forward and tell the therapist what's going on, and they get the diagnosis that way. And then when the diagnosis is presented, many times the person is still so shamed that they don't want to admit what's going on. And so they don't have the capacity to self-reflect and change their behavior, at least not in the long term. In the short term, sometimes they do, when the person that they are with threatens to leave or says, you know, this needs to change. And so they'll say, okay, I'm going to change. And the change will occur for a short amount of time, but they do not have the ability to really change these subconscious beliefs. There is a difference in their brain. There are some things that are going on in there. And there are comorbidities with this disorder many times. And that means that there are co-occurring disorders, such as bipolar disorder, ADHD, and things like that, just depressive disorder. So, but the main thing is that the first thing in any kind of thing that we're going through is admitting that there's a problem. And they, most of the time, do not have the ability to do that. There are very few that can. If they can do that, they can change it. But if they don't, which is like 97% of the time or more, they cannot change it. So the sad thing is you cannot love someone through this. So most of the time, if you decide to stay with someone like this, you have to accept the fact that they will not change. The other option is leave and become your healthiest, best self. Those are your choices. So that is the clinical diagnostic criteria for NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And if you are in a situation where you have lived through this, if you've lived through anything similar, I do have a free coaching and support community on Facebook. It's called FLY, F-L-Y. It stands for Feel Like Yourself. And you are welcome to join that. And I also do coach one-on-one with women, and I help you get clarity around your relationships, whether it is a healthy relationship that you are wanting a checkup on, whether it's a relationship with yourself, a friend, a romantic partnership, and also help women call in healthy, happy love. If you're looking to find your soulmate, your friend, I am happy to do that. I absolutely love doing that. Please reach out to me at coachingcloset@gmail.com. You can also find me at coachingcloset.com on my website, and you can follow me at Coaching Closet on Instagram. I would love to talk more about this with anyone out there. Post your comments and questions as always, and I would love to be a resource for you guys. So anything else you would love for me to talk about, please put in the comments. Any questions you have, I will be making more videos about any relationship topic that you want to discuss and all the ones that I want to discuss as well. And be blessed. Turn your pain into your purpose as I have.